A couple of months ago I picked up and played Legendary, a deck building game that attracted me mainly because of its theme. The theme is superheroes, Marvel superheroes. I am a huge fan of superhero comics and I wanted to play a game with Marvel heroes. I didn't really care much about the mechanics. Mechanics are, it's a deck building game. I played a game which I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it mechanically. I just felt that the theme felt a little weak. It didn't give me a strong sense of story and theme, and that's one of the minuses of that game, which I still enjoyed and I find overall a good game. Then, at Gen Con 2014, I saw that a new version or a new chapter in the Legendary saga was being released, and that was Legendary Encounters. The Legendary engine now with an alien theme, alien not in the generic sense of aliens, but in the Alien franchise, the movies that we all love, that we all watch, even the ones that then we ended up not liking, and we knew we wouldn't like them before we watched them, we still watch them. But at least some of those movies were just so good, just such important parts of movie history and personal history for many of us. What was I? Legendary. In Legendary Encounters, players play cooperatively and they try to survive against the attacks of the aliens. The game includes several scenarios, and the scenarios capture the movies. So you can play movie 1, movie 2, 3, and 4. You can play through the entire movie series. You can play them in any order. You can create different scenarios but mixing and matching. But in nothing else, the idea that you can play the movies already was very promising to me. Already told me that the designers were trying to go for theme, for a more specific thematic feel than what I had found in Legendary Marvel Heroes. So this was really attractive to me. The Legendary engine, which is good, with the promise of more theme and story. I was very excited when I picked up the game. I played the game, and in this video, if you keep watching, you will learn how the game plays, and also you will learn whether or not Encounters brings a much needed sense of theme and story to the Legendary engine.
The game is played with the aid of this mat here, which looks pretty nice and looks durable too, and sticks to the surface where you place it on so that the mat will not slide around during gameplay. Several areas on the mat. This area here is called the barracks, and this is the HQ. You will always have 5 cards in the HQ area, and the cards come out from the barracks deck. The barracks deck is formed by 4 character decks that you can select from a variety of possible decks that come with the game. You shuffle them together, 4 of them, you form this deck, and this deck will generate resources that players can acquire during the game. You can mix and match characters, and that means resource decks any way you want, or you can follow specific set of instructions and choose the characters that represent a specific movie in the Alien series. For example, here I've set up the characters for the second movie, Aliens. So we have Private Hudson, Corporal Hicks, we have Bishop, we know her, and as I said, there will always be 5 cards. As you purchase one of these cards, it is immediately replaced in the HQ with a card from the barracks. Each game has a location. There are 4 possible locations, and yes, you can choose any location, or you can match the location of a specific movie with the characters from that movie, which is what I did here, again, with the Aliens movie. Each game will have 3 objectives, Objective 1, Objective 2, Objective 3, each representing an objective that the players are trying to achieve, and in order to win the game, the players need to complete the 3 objectives in order from 1 to 3. I think you guessed it, there are several Objective 1s, Objectives 2, and Objectives 3, And you can choose to mix and match any such objectives to create, as you can see, a sort of like what-if scenario with what-if characters, what-if location, and what-if combination of objectives. Or you can play through the movies, which is what I like to do the most with this game. So here I have the objectives of the second movie of the series. Each objective comes with, let's call it a mini deck of challenges, of troubles that you have to face. There are, and each mini deck is indicated by a little, very tiny label at the bottom of the card. So the Lost Colony objective card comes with a Lost Colony mini deck of bad stuff that will happen to the players. You shuffle together all of the Objective 1 cards, all the Objective 2 cards, all the Objective 3 cards, and you form a deck with the Objective 1 on top, Objective 2 in the middle, Objective 3 at the bottom. Also, there is a deck of extra mean stuff that can happen to you. This is called the Drone deck. You shuffle a number of cards on the drone deck within each of the 3 mini decks, depending on the number of players. 1 player, 1 drone card per mini deck, 2 players, 2 drone cards per mini deck, so on and so forth. So even if you're always playing the same game over and over again, the drone cards will add different challenges to each game, increasing the replay value of the game. Each player has a character which is represented by an avatar. The avatar indicates what the character can do, but mainly gives you the health points of the character. There are also defense points, but these are not used in all modes of play. Then each character has then a specific card that matches the avatar, and that is shuffled with the initial deck, the starter deck of the player. Each player starts with a deck of 7 specialist cards and 5 grunt cards. Initial cards will grant you very basic resources. Each specialty card grants you a point of recruit power, a recruit point, and each grant gives you a combat point. Combat points are represented by that sort of Wolverine's claw slash. You shuffle your card in here, shuffle everything, and you have your initial deck ready to start. Then you draw 6 cards, and that's the standard size of your hand. And suppose that this is my initial draw. Well, this is 6 cards, this is 7 cards. My initial draw is 3 recruit points and 3 combat points. During your turn, first thing that happens is the Hive Face. The Hive deck is the deck that I mentioned earlier with the 3 objective mini decks. At the beginning of each turn, the active player takes a card from here and places it in the first available spot of the complex. And that card is placed there face down. Ooh, this is interesting and different from many other games of this type. I said the first available slot, but that's not correct. Because if there is a slot that is available right there, you put it there. If the slot is not available, you slide the card by 1. Essentially, the card always enters the rightmost space of the complex area. There are 5 spaces there, and the card pushes cards that may be there. It's also possible that some cards will be removed. In this case, you simply push as much as you need to make room for the new cards. So as the game progresses, cards will slide down in that direction. Cards come out face down, and they keep moving leftwards face down until they are scanned. That's one of the things that the card you can do it to the cards, and you will want to scan those cards. In any case, there are 5 slots in the complex area. If a card ever needs to be pushed out of the complex area, it is moved to the combat zone. That card at the point may be face up already. Suppose that this card was there, it is face up, it is simply moved to the combat zone when it needs to be moved there. If it still was face down, that is the moment when you turn it face up, when you need to move it from the complex to the combat zone. If it is some event, if it is some special action, you resolve it when you flip it, whether because of the combat zone movement or simply because you scan the area. And if it is a monster, then it simply goes to the combat zone and it stays there. It may also be that when you scan an area, you find an event, in which case you simply resolve the event. For example, here I found an event of the Lost Colony section. Then I look at the objective card for the Lost Colony section and I see what the event is and I resolve the event. So the event card will trigger an event here. Some cards may be hazards, in which case I simply look at the hazard section in the location and the hazard card will trigger an hazard here. Again, I simply perform and resolve what the text of the hazard is. I talked about scanning. How do you scan an area? Quite simple. Each area has a scanning value that you see printed there. You simply need to spend the cards with the combat value from your hand when it is your turn to scan an area. When it is your turn, you simply play cards from your hand to resolve effects that your cards can produce. I can spend combat cards to scan an area and or to attack enemies. As long as you have combat points, you can mix and match actions. I could attack an enemy, then scan an area, then if I still have points, I can attack more or scan more. To scan this area, I need to spend 2 combat points, 3 combat points, 3 and 4. To attack an enemy is pretty simple. Again, I play cards from my hand, the cards that have the combat value, and I need to match or exceed the number of combat points that the enemy has. Some enemies have a reveal power, which you implement when the card is revealed. Some powers of the enemies are implemented when the enemy reaches the combat zone. Some other events some enemies have a death event, which you simply perform and resolve when you're attacking and killing that opponent. You can also spend recruit points from your hand, and you spend those to purchase cards that come out of the barracks and enter the HQ. This is the cost that you need to pay to purchase cards. For example, I have 3 recruit points here. I could purchase any card that has a value of up to 3 points. If I had more points, I could purchase multiple cards. Again, resources are very flexible. As long as you have recruit points, you can purchase any number of cards whose total cost does not exceed what you can spend. And as soon as you purchase a card that goes to your discard pile, it will later be reshuffled into your main deck and it will come back into your hand like that. And as soon as a card is removed from the HQ, you replace it with a new one so that you always have 5 cards available there. Cards that are purchased and going to your deck will grant you recruit points. When they come back to your hand, will grant you extra combat points, so better combat abilities than are granted by the starting cards. There are also other powers that they can give you. For example, the coordinate power is a super cool one because you can coordinate actions with another player. When it is another player's turn, you can play a coordinate card from your hand, and now the player can benefit from the card that you played. You get to borrow effects from other players as long as they play coordinate cards during your turn. They may also be effects that are boosted by other cards that you play. Cards have symbols here, and some cards have effects that are boosted by other cards with a certain symbol that you may have played during your turn. For example, if I have this card, if I played this card here, after I played another card with that symbol, then the symbol of the card that I already played activates the effect of this card here when I played. Pretty much the symbol here means that you can activate that effect if you have played other cards with the required symbol from your hand during your turn. Vigilant Effects, really good effects. These are effects that stay in play. You put the card in front of you and the card is not discarded at the end of your turn. You can use it in later turns. So you can build up an attack or you can build up a purchase by using Vigilant cards. After you're done with your action phase, scanning, fighting, acquiring new cards, there's the strike phase, during which all enemies that are in the combat zone will attack the active player. For each enemy that is attacking you, you draw a strike from this deck, and you simply apply the effect. I get this card, for example, the researcher gets this card, then I slide it under her card, and that indicates the amount of damage that I received. There are also other effects during the game that may give you strikes, you may be able to prevent them by using that, but being attacked during the combat phase, during the strike phase, from enemies in the combat area is one of the most common ways of receiving wounds. Some wounds may have special effects. For example, the next player may also draw a strike from a splash damage. Some damage can be healed. There can be effects in the game that heal you. And this is just the fun thing that may happen. Fun is not the right word, but it's very thematic. You may be attacked by a face hugger. Splush. This guy tries to attach itself to your face. If you can fight it your turn and eliminate it, that's great. The next player may manage to fight and eliminate it if you were on table. So basically a facehugger, when enters play, should be removed within 2 turns, either the turn in which it enters play or the next one. If not, then it impregnates the player that revealed it, either because of a strike or facehuggers may come out of the Hive deck too. If a facehugger impregnates you, then you get a chest burster card in your discard pile. It's a timer. It goes in your discard pile. It is shuffled in. When you reveal it, well, I think it's obvious what happens. It is not good. All that is left for you is, well, to hope that your friends still in the game will avenge you. Unless you're playing with some optional rules, and in that case you become the alien player, then yes, there is an alien deck that allows you to perform actions, but at that point your objectives are very different from the ones that you originally had. You're simply trying to kill your former friends that now have become possible hosts of your eggs and possible meals. Another variant game that you have is that you may have traders. Then you shuffle in a certain number of cards that are called agenda cards at the beginning of the game. You give them to the players, and you may have a trader whose evil agenda is to hurt the players at the players. Battlestar Galactica type of situation in which you may be playing with the agenda cards, and yet there may not be a traitor, so you're just obsessing paranoidally over your friends without reason, or maybe there is a reason. Whichever mode you're playing, the main idea is that players are trying to win the game by accomplishing all 3 objectives. If the players complete the 3rd objective before the end of the game, they win the game. They lose the game if they're all killed, of course, and that's pretty much what you expect in such a situation.
Mechanically, the game works. The legendary engine was solid before, it is still solid here. You have nice and interesting choices of resources between the things that you can do. You can purchase cards, you can attack. Here you have the action of scanning. I like very much that there are these enemies that go around face down. You see them coming, but you do not know exactly what they are. Nice mechanics there. I like the fact that you can specialize your deck and specialize in a certain type of icon, a certain class of characters, so that then your effects will boost each other up. Or you can choose to have a more flexible, versatile deck with a vaster range of effects, but then they are not working together as well. Mechanically, nothing to complain. The good things that I found in Legendary are definitely here. But the theme, this is where this game really excels. It shines in that department. I'll say it without hesitation, this is the most thematic deck building game that I've ever played. It does bring some much needed sense of theme and story to the legendary engine and to the deck building world. If I compare this game to Nightfall and Thunderstone, which are probably the two most thematic deck building games that I played, I see that they don't even come close to this one. It is just incredible how this game creates an immersive situation that simulates the movies that you're playing through. Or even if you're not a fan of the movies, it simulates that atmosphere of oppression, of fear, of threat. It's great. It really manages to achieve that sense of story. And it does it in a variety of ways. For example, in the way in which the enemies scale. True, in other games, weaker enemies come out of the main deck first and stronger enemies later. But here it is not just a matter of the strength. It's also a matter of the abilities and the characteristics and the traits that the enemies have that will create different situations, will force you to react in different ways, and will create stories that, if you know the movies, so you can recognize they're very close to the general feel of the movies. And if you don't know the movies, again, these are just strong stories that you want to play because they're exciting, they're threatening, they keep you hooked because you really want to see what happens next. And the scenarios change incredibly from scenario to scenario, from movie to movie. It is you're playing the first movie, you start finding eggs around, strange eggs, oh, cute little eggs, so you go poking them and wonder what's gonna happen next. And you realize that poking the eggs is bad. When an egg is found, you should not underestimate that. You need to attack it as soon as possible before it bursts and turns into a face hugger. It is not just a matter of different enemies with different art. The enemies do behave differently. With the final enemy of the first movie, well, you have this big scary monster you have to destroy. In the second movie you have different situations. One of the objectives, for example, is to set up the guns, to arm a part of the environment. There are ways in which, yes, you can also change the environment the complex adds to the options that you have, adds to the challenges that you have, adds to the variety of gameplay. And then the final boss will behave in different ways from the previous boss, for example. The movies, that is the scenarios, play differently from one another. They're each incredibly strong. This is a game that I enjoyed enormously. Not only was it great per se, but it was so great because it really showed something that deck building games have not been this good at doing before. Some have done it okay, some have done it a little more than okay, but no other deck building game that I know of manages to tell you so much story, to give you so much theme as this one. I am extremely pleased with my purchase. The components look good. Another thing which is very important for many players, having a good solitaire option is a plus. I know it is for me because I do not always have the time to go out and play with friends, because like many other people, I'm a pretty busy person. If a game is good and doesn't have the solitaire option, I'm happy to play the good game as is. If a game is good and has a solitaire option, even better. Deck building games have very often come out with solitaire options that feel a little pasted on. This one works. You can play this game in solitaire and it just works as well as a multiplayer. You make your characters work with one another. Something you can do is to specialize your characters. Okay, you're gonna get a lot of resources, you're going to get a lot of things of that type. It even adds to the story that you're specializing your characters, you're giving them a little more personality as the game goes along, but the game is perfectly playable in solitaire, which is frankly a huge advantage. Legendary Encounters, a game that I enjoyed enormously. It's highly recommended. I think I cannot recommend it highly enough. If there are things that you did not like about deck building games that you played in the past, well, give this one a chance. There is a good chance that this game will fix that for you. I know that this game, to me, in my opinion, has brought deck building gaming to a whole new level. and I couldn't be happier to have this game in my collection, and I know for sure that this one is a keeper.